Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Wednesday. Happy, snowy, and icy Wednesday in the DMV area. Welcome to a new weekly Wednesday webinar. My name is Eddie Villanueva, and we're so happy that you're here with us. Please take a moment to grab your dinner, your coffee, your water, your tea, hot chocolate, whatever it is that you're feeling this evening, because we are in for a thriller. We're gonna go through an amazing topic, which is beyond the great wealth transfer, what beneficiaries need to know, and it's hosted by our IRA team. So thank you so much for joining us. Please make sure that you always send us your questions, your concerns, your comments. If you want to say hi, you're more than welcome to. Please use the chat feature or the Q&A. And our commitment, as every Wednesday, is to read all of those questions live at the end of the presentation. So thank you so much again for your support. We appreciate it so much. Before we came live, JT was sharing a testimony of how one of our members was so happy to learn with us each and every Wednesday. So when you send us those reminders, it means a lot to us. So thank you very much for your support, because without the attendees, this wouldn't be possible. And of course, shout outs to the panelist team as well. All of you make this possible. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So please let us know, how are you feeling? If you're in the DMV area, how's your neighborhood? I know a lot of neighborhoods are under, a lot of ice still. I know Candice has been posting, herself doing like two steps one day, one shovel at a time. But hey, I think, she's good now with her vehicle. So shout outs to you, Candice. I know you're putting that hard work out there. All right, and I see somebody saying from New Mexico. So shout outs to New Mexico. We want to say thank you so much for joining us. Whether you're on the, New Mexico or Illinois or Virginia or West Coast, East Coast, South, North Side, whatever it is, maybe international, I don't know. But thank you so much for joining us once again. And please make sure that this is very engaging, very interactive. We feed off people's energy. So if you engage with us, if you interact with us, we want to make sure that this is more than presentation. It can be a conversation. So with all of this that I have said, once again, thank you so much. I want to pass it on to, my colleague, somebody that I have learned so much throughout our almost 3 years, I want to say, that we've been together working. Our membership development officer, he knows it all about membership. If you want to open your membership, him and his team will be the people taking care of you. So Milton Aguilar Bolanos, I will pass it on to you.
Well, Eddie, thank you so much. And again, welcome back to another weekly Wednesday webinar. We are so excited to have you back here with us. And what I'd like to say is it's the favorite night for us, right? It's our favorite night of the week, every Wednesday night. Season 4, Eddie, you forgot. This is the first time I will say that I'm gonna call on you, because you totally forgot to say that this is season 4. And so believe it or not, we're wrapping up the first month of January. This is insane. Time is going by so fast, but like Eddie stated, time is flying, whenever you're having fun. So with that being said, we are truly hoping that you for most everyone, that you're staying warm, because we know it's so cold out there. There's pretty much still a lot of snow throughout the East Coast, and they're calling for more weather over the weekend. So hopefully that won't be the case. But I think I had enough already here, at least for us here in the DC area. But with that being said, before we start with the introductions, I did wanted to give a special shout out to one of our panelists who early this week celebrated his 21st birthday, and that is none other than Mr. Eddie Villanueva. So happy belated birthday, Eddie! We're so happy to have you and being part of this amazing team. So I'm pretty sure you had a great time celebrating your birthday. But with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and do the introductions. As you can see, if you were with us last week, I know Mr. Stan was. And by the way, thank you so much for joining the panelists last week, Mr. Stan. But it was only two of us, just carrying myself. And now this time, as you can see, your screen is probably full of different people on camera, and that's because we brought the whole crew to this exciting weekly Wednesday webinar. And we're going to start without any particular order, but again, I already called him out twice, Mr. Eddie Villanueva from the marketing team. Also from the marketing team, we have Andrea Londono, who's going to be keeping track and reading all the questions that you may have throughout this presentation. So again, as Eddie stated, we want you to participate. Don't be shy. Submit all your questions using the chat feature or the Q&A. Whichever way you want to submit your questions, we will be more than happy to read them at the end. And as always, it is our commitment that we're going to answer those questions before we let you go this evening. Also assisting Andrea with those questions in the Q&A is going to be Jarnika Trent, my right hand from the membership development team. She's going to be assisting Andrea with those questions at the end, because we do anticipate a lot of questions. This is a very important topic, and I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of questions coming in. So Andrea and Jornika will be in charge of reading those questions at the end. Also, going back, by the way, forgive me because I'm bouncing back and forth here, but I started with marketing, went to membership development, but I had to go back to marketing because I cannot forget the person responsible for making us look great every single Wednesday night, and that is none other than Carrie Lazar from the marketing team, in charge of putting all this beautiful content that you're gonna be seeing throughout this presentation. And with that being said, as I stated, we're going deep today. I mean, last week we had two people team. This week we have the whole crew, and the team that's going to be leading this department is actually our IRA department, and they brought everyone. And when I say everyone, it's everyone. So joining us today from the IRA team, we have Raven Owens, who is a IRA specialist who is going to be assisting and probably answering some of your questions. Also from the IRA team, we have our senior IRA specialist, Miss Candace Davis. She's also going to be taking a shot and also doing a small part of the presentation as well, I've been told. So stay tuned. And the person leading the whole amazing team is none other than Madison Love, who is the IRA manager. So I'm going to stop right here. Miss Madison, take it away.
Thank you so much. What a great introduction. So, we are very lucky to have our entire IRA team here, not just me. I knew normally I do these when we have an IRA topic by myself, but this is a big topic, and there's a lot to it. And so we figured it would be worthwhile to bring our entire team here so you can see us, so that if you have follow-up questions, if you need to work with us in the future, you know who to reach out to. So last year around this time, we did a very similar topic. We talked about the great wealth transfer that's happening, and we're going to get a little bit into what that is. But we do have that former, it was one of our more well-attended webinars. And so if that is something that you missed last time, it is still available on our website, and definitely worth a watch, because we're only going to brush the topic really briefly about the great wealth transfer and mostly focus on beneficiaries. So if you feel like you're stepping in halfway through, know that the part A is out there. So let's talk about what we are going to talk about today. So we are going to go into the great wealth transfer a little bit. We'll do a quick refresher of what it is, what that term means, and what it means for you. And then we're going to talk about preparing our beneficiaries for success. And then lastly, we'll cover what our beneficiary options are once they have received that transfer of wealth. So what is the great wealth transfer? So we right now are in the midst of the largest transfer in history. Right now, the baby boomers have, and the generation before them, have accumulated the most wealth that has been able to be passed on in the history of recorded history, right? So, which is so that leads to a lot of questions, right? And a lot of there's a lot more importance on knowing how to transfer that wealth, so that it honors the earner's best wishes. So, and then of course that those funds are being transferred to their beneficiaries, which are typically their Gen X or millennial children, grandchildren, various charities, however you want that money to go. There's probably an avenue for you. So we're going to get into that in a little bit, but the great wealth transfer refers to that passing of the wealth. And then understanding how to effectively pass and receive this wealth is essential. So we don't want, the people who've earned this wealth have worked hard for it. They've made smart decisions in investing. They've done a lot of really great things, and we want their wishes to be honored. And so wherever they want that money to go, we want it to be done effectively, and in the way of that earners, the way that they want it to be transferred. So right now, it's at least 72 trillion. It's probably a little bit more. And that is going from that baby boomer generation to the future generations. So this is a big deal that there's this much money held in retirement accounts um, in various different resources, things like that. I am actually going to pass it on to Candace, and she is going to talk more about the Great Wealth Transfer and how to recognize where you are in this process.
Okay, so with the Great Wealth Transfer, it's just basically, when the funds are being passed on to the beneficiaries on the account. And there is a lot that goes with that, and making sure that basically all your funds are where you want them to go. So it is good to start the communication process with that early on with this. You can go to the next slide, Madison. Okay, so basically with preparing your beneficiaries for success, communicate with them. Communicate with your beneficiaries to let them know where you have your accounts at. Let them know what the financial literacy part of, as well as structuring transfers to the account and assembling a team. So even though, it may be that morbid conversation with it, but it is good to talk to your beneficiaries, especially because with the last slide, it's $72 trillion. It is a lot of money that is left in the account that will be going to them. So, we can help them along the way. You can go to the next slide.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Candace. So communication is key. As Candace mentioned, it's really important to have these tough conversations. We know that they can be tough. We know that family dynamics play a big part into that. We know that cultural influence can play into that. And so we know that this is not a small feat, but it's really important to discuss values, assets, and intentions when having these tough conversations. It's when these funds are primarily the reason that you save and put this money towards retirement is so that you can live well and comfortably in retirement. And so it's really important to communicate those values of how you want to live, what you want to use those funds for in retirement, whether that be to live a more lavish lifestyle or focus on building generational wealth, or focusing on making sure that there's enough medical care and funds for medical reasons as well. So it's really important to communicate what values you intend to carry into your retirement, because it might be different from how you dedicated your working history to. And then it's really, really important to let everybody know what assets you have. I know, again, that this can be an uncomfortable topic. You also need to be aware and protect yourself from elder abuse. Elder abuse is often done in the family. And so it's very, very important that this is done in a way that sets you up for success and protects you as the one who has the accounts. But we don't want anything that you have worked hard for, that you have set aside, to go unnoticed, right? So I think of the popular show Gilmore Girls, and in it, the couple, the older couple, is talking about some of their assets, and their daughter is showing the mom, what assets they have, and the mom goes, "Oh, I didn't know we owned windmills," and the daughter goes, "Yeah, you own, according to this, you own, however many windmills." And we don't want that to be a surprise, right? Now, luckily, like in that situation, that couple had all those assets written out and documented. So it doesn't even necessarily need to be like a sit down conversation and remember all of this. just notating where all of the assets are. And that's a helpful tool for you, on a personal level too. But and then also talking about intentions. This kind of goes back to values as well, right? If your intention is to, for example, not spend a lot of money on medical expenses or after, retirement care, things like that, that definitely needs to be communicated because retirement homes, long-term facilities, things like that can be very, very costly. And so if the intention is to live with a child, we want to make sure that that child is aware. If the intention is not to live with one of your children, which is equally fair, then we want to make sure that there's enough funds in your assets. And those assets probably need to be a little bit more liquid because you're going to be using them, right? So it's just really important to discuss intentions, know what everybody wants, and make decisions eyes open. So communication and practice. So how do you go about this? This is a sensitive topic. It can make people really uncomfortable. And ultimately, your family best and whoever your beneficiaries are best. And so sometimes having something formal, something planned ahead, like a family meeting, is really, really valuable because everybody can come to that meeting knowing that we're going to discuss this really hard thing. And so they can emotionally prepare themselves for this conversation. Whereas for some people, it needs to be a little bit more casual and casually mentioned. So, but again, your family best. It's just important to know how you and be really intentional about it. How are you going to communicate? Also, like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't necessarily need to be a sit-down conversation. You are welcome to have in case I die plans. I have this for my husband. The poor guy, if I die, he's gonna get taken to debtor's prison because he's not gonna know, what we have and where to pay it. So for us, we make sure that we have an in case I die folder. They sell folders, they sell packets, or you can also just do a little bit of research and figure out what you think that you need to put in your in case you die plans. And then, of course, there's legacy letters. This is a lot like a will, or a trust where you state out the intentions, things like that. But you have the opportunity with a legacy letter to be a little bit more personal and kind of explain some of those decisions that wouldn't necessarily be in a legal document, right? So. I know that this was really helpful for when my mother-in-law passed away a couple years ago, and right before she died, she sent out a really beautiful message to all of her children, and it wasn't even that closely related to exactly what we're talking about, but in it, she expressed her desires and her wishes, and as we were making decisions in a really tough time, we were often able to refer back to that letter and make sure and we were so much more confident that we were carrying out her desires, that certain things were going where they needed to go, that assets were communicated, things like that, because we knew what her intentions were, what she wanted. So those are just a few options for you to think about. There's obviously endless ways to communicate. And again, your family best. Another important element is teaching your family financial literacy. And I say teaching your family because whether you are the beneficiary or the benefactor, you can teach financial literacy to those that you love. This has been coming up a lot in my family because at this point, I've been working with IRAs for about 10 years. I know more than my parents do when it comes to IRAs specifically. However, they know a lot more about running a family and household. And so we've been having a lot of discussions lately where we've been able to help each other and lift each other up. And it's been really productive. So something like that is always a really, I think sharing can be a lot more beneficial than, sitting down and having like a financial lecture. Topics that you're definitely going to want to cover, though, or make sure that your children know, or that your beneficiaries, I guess, know, is the power of investing. A lot of your assets are probably invested, whether that is just in stocks and they're fairly easy to liquidate, or something like a rental property where you're going to have to deal with a rental contract and liquidating that, and that can be quite a lengthy process to get those assets to your beneficiary. And so making sure that so whether you are discussing specific assets or not, the discussion of investing can carry a lot of weight when it comes to financial literacy. Taxation is another big one. We will get more into this when we talk about beneficiaries, but especially if we're discussing a large amount of money or funds or assets, the beneficiary really needs to come up with a strategic plan to avoid taxation, I shouldn't say avoid taxation, to strategize with the taxes, right? Because this is a gift to the beneficiaries. Receiving these funds, receiving these assets are a gift, and as much of that gift as can be kept for the benefactors intentions is a good way of honoring them. So taxation is a really, really tricky element of this. We'll get into it a little bit more later. We are not tax advisors. I highly recommend both, whether you're in the situation where you will be transferring the wealth or receiving the wealth. It's really important to have somebody, a specialist in your corner, especially when it comes to a tax strategy. Estate planning, as well. Things like knowing who your financial advisor is, introducing your financial advisor to your children, making sure that you have a financial advisor if you don't. In my opinion, and I've said this in prior Wednesday webinars, I think that every single person on the planet should have, who has any kind of assets at all, should have an estate planner, or a financial advisor. And so involving that, and then also with estate planning, discussing wills, discussing trusts, whatever setup that you have needs to be taught to the family as well. So there is that. And then now you might not know everything, right? And that can be really scary, and that can be hard to set up a discussion with your family or to teach your children or whatever the case may be. And so there's a lot of educational resources out there. I love these Wednesday webinars. We have several that go over IRA basics, retirement basics, but several financial institutions do this, and some of them cover other things. We have a wonderful resource with Fellows, who's our financial investors. They host some of these Wednesday webinars. It doesn't just have to be webinars, but looking into retirement, IRA basics, things like that, knowing how to strategize for your retirement. Really, really good educational resources. Tax fundamentals, and again, there are resources out there for webinars, articles, you name it, it's probably out there. Another really great resource for learning tax fundamentals is to talk to your tax specialist. Every single person who has any kind of certification has to maintain that certification, and most of the time they have to do that with continued education. And so what conferences are they attending? Do they have one-off webinars? Is that something that's open to the public? Can you discuss with them what they most recently learned when they were, keeping their certifications up, things like that. And then financial decision-making during life transactions. So when different transactions or when different events happen, taking a moment, whether if you have time before the decision or evaluating after you've made the decision, and learning from those lessons is really valuable. And then sharing that knowledge. You don't have to know everything right now, but if you learn something, goes back to educating those family members as well. And then something that has been happening at USSFCU is our foundation. We launched a foundation last year, and it really focuses on education, financial literacy and education. And you can go to this website that's here, and they have a lot of resources for education as well. So endless resources out there as long as you are willing to look. And then the last topic I'll discuss before sending it back over to Candace is structuring the transfer. Your duty as the benefactor, as the person who has earned this money, is to make sure that money is distributed in the way that you want it to be done. And that is primarily done through trust wills, trust/wills, beneficiary and beneficiary designations. It is so important to have beneficiaries listed on your accounts, especially your IRAs. Because without that designation, it makes it so much harder on your loved ones when they try to claim those funds. And it's already a really hard time. It's already a really confusing time, even in the best of situations, even when you know all the things, when you've done your financial education to your children, it all becomes so much more complicated. It becomes so much more murky in the time of a tragedy. And so to have trusts and beneficiaries already lined up is the greatest and last gift that you can give to your beneficiaries. And I cannot tell you, after how the decade that I have spent in the banking industry, how many people have come up to me, tears in their eyes, saying, I wish my parents would have set this up. I wish my parents would have done this. And I'm going to make sure that I do it for my children, because there's just so much that's being dealt with. And the last thing that we need to do is fighting relatives and dealing with, the government and waiting and all these things for assets that are not designated to anybody. The easiest way to set this up is with a trust. By leaps and bounds. And you're going to have to go to an attorney and set that up, and it's going to cost a little bit of money. But what's so nice about trusts is that if you want to make a change, you just have to update the trust. On all of your other accounts, all of your other assets, just list the trust as the beneficiary, and you don't have to make any changes to the individual accounts. The trust controls all. The trust can also get a lot more detailed. If you want your grandchild to be 21 before they get the money, you can do that. If you want them to be married before you get the money, before they get married, you can do that. The world really is your oyster when it comes to those trusts. And so it's worth the time and the effort and the money and the, all that stuff to set up that trust. But if that's not the right thing for you right now, or whatever the case may be, and no matter what, at least do a beneficiary designation on all of your accounts. And then if changes do happen, you haven't done a trust yet, make sure that you're contacting that financial institution. We just went through a big process where we were checking all of our beneficiaries on our IRAs, and there's a lot of them that didn't have it. There was a lot of them that, listed relatives that were much older, and they had passed years and years and years before. And so it's definitely something that gets missed a lot. And so that's why the trust is so nice. So wills are also good. They're just a little bit less detailed than a trust, but they're a little bit more affordable. And there's differences between trust and beneficiaries, or trust and wills. And on our last webinar, we went into that a little bit more. So on the Great Wealth Transfer webinar from last year. And so that's worth looking into. Also, it's really worth talking to a lawyer and discussing the difference between a trust and a will and which one's better and right for your family. A lot of the things that we're talking about today are very individualized. And so please keep in mind that we're just giving general information out there, and will hopefully lead you to the right people if you want individual situations. So Candace, I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to send you on to the next one. So this is so I was just talking about how it's really, really valuable to know who to talk to if you need an individual circumstance looked at. And so some really key people to have in your team are an attorney. They're going to be the ones who can help set up your will or trust. They're the ones who can make sure that, everything is, that all of your I's are dotted and T's are crossed when it comes to estate planning, especially towards the end of life. And then a financial advisor. I mentioned before how important I think financial advisors are. They are so good, not just for the end of life or not just for passing on wealth, but also to make sure that your wealth is growing. They are also very good at tax knowledge. If you don't want to specifically, if you want an all-in-one person, I would start with your financial advisor. And then And then look at other resources as you need to get more individualized and depending on your circumstance. But a financial advisor is going to be able to advise you on setting up those beneficiaries, things like that. They're going to be able to advise you on making sure that your money is growing. They're going to be able to talk to you about strategies to avoid excess taxation, things like that. And then a tax professional is really, really valuable too. I have a huge caveat with this. They need to be a qualified tax professional. There are so many tax professionals out there who help and who are phenomenal at their jobs when it comes to annual taxes, whatever the case may be, whatever they specialize in. But especially if you're wanting something like retirement funds, various things when it comes to end of life, passing on wealth, tax strategies, things like that. Sometimes it's better to find somebody who's a little bit more specialized. So, and if you want us to vet them, we've done it before. But if find a tax professional who knows what they're talking about when it comes to IRAs, when it comes to retirement accounts, it's worth making sure that you have a good one. All right, Candace, if you want to take it over and talk about beneficiary options after that wealth gets transferred.
Okay, so in these next slides, we'll go over, like Madison said, the beneficiary options after the transfers happen. With this, there are some things you need to do, like immediate considerations. With that, it's more or less what it is you now want to do with the funds, whether it's to, keep it at the current financial institution, transfer it, just being able to get a hold of those funds. With the transfer, there are timelines and access. So there's not going to be immediate access to those funds. There's just certain times to where once we start the policy or once we start doing procedures, where we'll start getting the forms out to the beneficiary to get their signature for them to figure out what they want to do, which goes into the next one for what is their options. The beneficiary, depending on if it's a family member or a non-family member or entity, they do have several options as what they want to do with these funds. Next slide. So with immediate consideration, it is best to notify the financial institution right away. For me, with dealing with IRAs for a long period of time, I don't even know the number anymore. Fraud with deceased accounts is extremely high. One reason it's high is because, like Madison said, we may not have the right beneficiary, or the member may not have told their family member, hey, I have an account at this financial institution. Well, they may have had their life savings at one financial institution and a little bit at another one. So now their account is here with $200,000, but nobody has notified us. That account is just sitting there with really nobody watching it. So it's always best to notify the financial institution. And also just depending on the situation, if there's going to be a lag time, you can notify us at each step, or you can say, hey, such and such, this member has passed. I'll be able to get in contact with you in 30 days. That way, in 30-day time frame, somebody is looking back at that account just to see, and then reaching out just to say, hey, how are you doing? What is the next step? Is there anything I can help you with? Also with the providing required documentation. Sometimes, like Madison said, we did just do our big beneficiary project. Sometimes, especially if the member, I'll say, with the credit union, some of our members haven't really updated their beneficiary since they opened their account. Maybe they had their child, so their child is still living, and they have the old beneficiary form. So they never updated it, but they have a copy of it. Okay, we'll need that form. We will need that form, as well as we will need a death certificate. If things are going into, if there's no beneficiary, then we'll need an estate paperwork. We'll need to know who is taking over the member's finances at this point. to claim these funds. So there are certain documentation that we need to step further, but the one thing we will always need is that death certificate before we can even give any information to the beneficiary or to the executor of the estate. Next slide. Okay, so with understanding timelines with asset and account accessibility, once we get the death certificate, we can really give you the information as of that time. Once we can see that this is a, actual death certificate, we can see the seal. We can start giving the beneficiary the information right then and there. It does not mean we can release the funds on the account, but we can start the process. We have a claim that we have to file, and the claim, depending on if we have all the information from beginning to end, a very clean claim can be anywhere from 7 to 10 days. So with that time frame, it's information that will go out to the beneficiary, and then we'll go into the claims department to handle the claim, and then the funds will be sent back out. If there is a time to where it's a little bit more complicated, then unfortunately the claims I've seen, some claims have gone a year or more, because we just have to, with the timeline, we need those documents. But the goal is to follow those timelines to get everything out. So the first part of the timeline is notifying us, getting us the death certificate. Then the death certificate, as well as the beneficiary form, which hopefully we do have on file. Then we'll submit that. And then they'll send forms out to the beneficiary, to say, hey, what would you like to do with these funds? That information will go back to them. They'll let us know, and then we'll cut the check. That timeline is really between 7 or 10 days, but again, it all depends on all the information to make sure that all the information is collected and received at once. Go to the next slide. Okay, so with the IRA beneficiaries after the Secure Act. So with this is basically, there are different types of beneficiaries. So with this, the eligible ones, which would be minor children of the decedent, disabled persons, chronically ill, a beneficiary that's not more than 10 years younger, spouses, and certain trusts. Now, with the designated beneficiary, that is a non-spouse or, again, certain trusts, and there's a 10-year rule. Let me go back to the eligible. It's a stretch, meaning they may be able to do the withdrawals out of the IRA a little bit longer than the 10-year. But for the designated, all the funds have to be out of the IRA within 10 years. And for the non-designated, those would be the charities, estates, and again, certain trusts. It's the 5-year rule, with, the funds being all liquidated within 5 years. So depending where your beneficiary is in this tree, basically says how long they have to take it out. So at the beginning of this slideshow, when they were talking about talking to a financial advisor, this is good, because if you have one person and say they're getting $500,000, and they're in the 10-year rule, well, they're going to have to get all that money in 10 years. And there's going to be a lot of implications with, especially with taxes. So it's good to, try to at least get the ball rolling. Again, this is a very taboo subject when talking to your beneficiaries, but it's also very healthy to talk to them, because again, when the time comes, it's going to be a lot going on, and at least they'll know. So with this is just piggybacking on with the rules and stuff. So with a spouse can take a lump sum. They can do the 10-year, like the spouse can do all of them. They can assume the IRA as their own. They can also roll it over to an IRA or an eligible plan. With a non-spouse beneficiary, they can do a lump sum. They have to take it out within the 10 years, or they can do the life expectancy table. Now the life expectancy table is somewhat like the RMD table, but it's completely different because the RMD, again, is when they hit that certain age. But with this, it sort of kind of follows that same rule, except for it's only taking a year off for all of that information afterwards to get to clear out the account in 10 years. And then the designated, again, lump sum or the 10-year, or they're the non-person with the estates or a certain trust and the entity. So if you want to do it to a animal shelter, they can do a lump sum or 5 years. A lot of them, I've only seen a couple of them that'll do the 10 years. Again, it all depends on what the amount is because it is going to change their tax bracket. Next slide. And then with this, it's the tax strategies and the pitfalls. Again, with this, their income is going to change. So with their income changing, it's going to take them to a different tax bracket. And then in some states, their taxes, they may have a tax on the funds that they're getting because it's an inherited now account. So with all of this, with their income changing, or even when they do their yearly distributions, it changes a lot of things. So with this, and again, it with the unintended triggers, they may not know the state that they're in has an inherited tax bracket. And even though they're a beneficiary, they're still inheriting this money. So again, at the beginning, when a tax advisor and a financial advisor are very important, especially if you have a beneficiary that is getting a lot at the end, because it's a lot that goes along with it, especially with taxes, and what they're going to have to pay because they may have to pay it over the 10-year, over the 5-year, over the year if they take the lump sum. But it's just going to change a lot for them. So again, it's good to talk to them to let them know, hey, this is what it is. And sometimes I've seen when beneficiaries have withdrawn funds out of their account, they may just take 50% to do their federal withholdings or whatever the case may be, because they already know that this is really going to hit them hard on taxes. So they take it out of what they are inheriting. So again, these are just a lot of things just to talk about with your beneficiary, just to keep them educated on it.
Great.
And
Thanks.
this going back to Madison.
Thanks so much. Candace, great job. It is. So yeah, I mean, it's complicated. Beneficiary inheritance can be complicated because it depends on who you are to the person that's deceased. And so there's a lot of various things to consider, a lot of things to consider. And so that's why we want you to have a good team, all that good stuff. So now we've gotten through all of that. We have a tax strategy. You're taking in that wealth. And this is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so we want to make sure that you have thought through that your beneficiaries, that you as the beneficiary have thought through various opportunities that you have with this money. And so we always recommend to pay off your debt. There's no investment that's going to equal the amount that you're being charged on high interest debt, right? So if you get a large amount of money, we always recommend considering if it's lucrative, if it's beneficial to you, to pay off your debt first. The next thing, after you pay off your debt, it's always recommended to have emergency fund. Most of recommendations are for 3 to 6 months. It can be longer, especially if you have a job that is volatile, or if you know that the economy is bad or going to be bad, or whatever the case may be. Take all those things into consideration. Or if you're a single income home, having a larger emergency fund is probably wiser. And then after that, the funds are really up to your discretion. But another really good option is to invest in IRAs, real estate, or other options. So a really clever tax strategy that's out there is that if you are not wanting to pay taxes on your inherited funds, you can use part of those inherited funds to fund your own retirement accounts. So contributing to specifically a traditional IRA is going to, so you inherited, let's say you take a $10,000 or $5,000 distribution from your inherited IRA, and then you go and you immediately put $5,000 in your traditional IRA, your adjusted gross income for the year doesn't change at all. So you're not paying those taxes on that inherited money. Now, when you are retired and you're taking that money out of your traditional, you're going to pay taxes on it then because it's a tax deferred account. But in retirement, you're probably going to be in a lower tax bracket. And that's what we mean when avoiding, like when we're talking about a tax strategy, is that you can, if you inherit your funds at age 64 and you know you're going to retire in a year, it might be lucrative to not remove anything that first year because you're in a high tax bracket because you're still working full time. Whereas if you just wait a year, you'll still have 9 years to remove those funds and you won't be competing with your salary, right? And so that's just another tip or trick is that you can use this money to invest your own retirement accounts. You can also use it to build more wealth, especially if your goal, if the value of your family clan is to create generational wealth. Investing in things that bring in passive income is a really, really smart idea, and this is a really good opportunity to do that. Now, I always want to caveat that by saying, don't count your chickens too early here because people are living a lot longer, which means that a lot of the 72 trillion that is theoretically going to be transferred could get used up by the fact that people live longer, and the longer they live, the more medical costs they have. Long-term care facilities are really expensive, different things like that. So I never recommend that you rely on an inheritance to be there for you. But if you do it, once you have obtained it, options like this can be really, really helpful and lucrative. As far as next steps, it's always a good idea to review your estate planning, no matter where you are in the process. If it's been a couple of years, unless if you did it, in the last 3 months, it's really, really worthwhile to review your estate plan. If you're sitting out there like Madison, I have not done anything for estate planning, great. Figure out what your step one is. It might be meeting with a lawyer. It might be just having a conversation with your spouse. It might be having a conversation with your family. It might be meeting with our financial advisors. Whatever your first step is great, and it's time to do it. So and if you've done everything, you did everything 10 years ago and you're like so pleased with everything, you can still review it and just make sure. You might not realize that money is going to somebody who you're not talking to anymore, that a charity that you were donating money to is no longer in existence, or maybe they changed their name, or there's a lot of things that can change that you're not thinking about without looking at it. And then also make sure that you're interested, that you've engage with trusted professionals for personal advice. There are so many resources out there for you. There are people that this is their literal job. I know like Fellows is free. If you want to have a conversation with anybody in our IRA department, it's free. There's not necessarily a cost associated with using professionals, which is really, really beneficial. But I love this calculation, preparation plus informed decision making equals success. So we've talked a lot about Fellows. We work with a gentleman named Michael Schimmel, and you can make an appointment with him. He can do virtual. If you're local, he can do in person. I think he does the majority of his meetings virtually, but he'll sit down with you and figure out everything you need to figure out. It's a really good resource. Like I mentioned, there's no cost to it for you. And they will look at your entire portfolio and help you make educated decisions. And then another really great resource for education is Retirement Central. This is our website. If you go to USSFCU.org, You can find Retirement Central. You are able to open IRAs with us. You're able to manage your account. And then there's the educational component. So this is a really great resource to make sure that you are utilizing all retirement accounts, especially specifically IRAs. And so always worth a gander to go and look at that. This is your IRA team. You've heard from me. I'm the IRA manager, and Candace Davis, she's our senior IRA specialist. She's been doing it longer than I have. She handles most of our transactions. So if you're wanting to make a change, Candace is really your person. And then we have Raven Owen. She's our IRA coordinator, and she does so much for our department. She has been doing a lot with beneficiaries specifically lately. And so if you want to check your beneficiaries, anything like that, she's your girl. And then that's a good phone number to reach us at. And then that is our email that we all check that email all day long, every day. And so if you're not sure who you want to talk to, that's the place to go. And we will make sure that we answer your questions. And then this is our little reminder that we are not tax advisors. We do not provide financial or legal or tax advice. We are just here sharing what we know and what we've seen. And we're so grateful that you're here and sharing this time with us so that we can, help you in any way that we can. And that's it. So I am ready for questions.
Hi, thank you, Madison. Such a great presentation. And our first question is, I am never married, single, who doesn't have any children or other dependents. My parents no longer with us. And my niece and nephew and their children are my heirs. I have a typical TSP, FERS, paid off house, etc. Are any of these special consideration?
Yeah, so I definitely think that you are still somebody who would benefit from a financial advisor for sure, just to make sure that you have all the resources that you need. Retirement can be quite costly. So making sure that everything's invested properly, that things are continuing to grow in retirement. Once you hit retirement age, that does not mean that you shouldn't still be getting money, right? Having your funds work for you. And then also when it comes to estate planning, especially if there are elements or things that you want considered. I know for I have a relative who doesn't have children that she wants to leave anything to, but she does have animals. And so trusts are really, really valuable for that kind of consideration. I know, people, it's a joke that, you leave your funds to your animals, but the care of your animals who have been your companion are really valuable. And then also, if you're wanting to leave any funds to charities, organizations, things like that, estate planning can be really, really valuable for that. So short answer is yes. Of course, your situation best. And so I do recommend, like I at one point I mentioned with a financial advisor, that's a great place to start. You might not need an attorney or a tax advisor, but starting with a financial advisor will lead you in the direction that you need to go.
Awesome. All right. We have another question here. It says, hello, I left a job that I was vested in 100% IRA. Is it better to transfer to an IRA? And if so, what are the benefits? And then they stated, I meant 401k.
Gotcha. Yeah, again, this is going to be very much up to you or in your personal circumstance. I would definitely meet with a financial advisor to look at your specific situation. To me, the main benefits of putting it all into an IRA is that it's all in one place. But also different accounts have different investment options sometimes. So if your 401k is in investments that you like, that's great. Or if your TSP is an investment that you like your TSP in, then that's great. But if you want something that's not offered by those things, obviously you're going to want to transfer it into an IRA. So I would definitely schedule a meeting with a financial advisor to have them look at your full portfolio, and they can advise you on your personal circumstance. But so it kind of just depends. Sometimes it's better to keep it in the retirement accounts, and sometimes it's better to combine them.
Next question is there an IRA clearance house where you could search for old IRAs that you forgot about?
Not that I'm aware of. So, it's the what will happen is it it well a lot of times the money just sits there. And so a couple of things can happen. One, sometimes they'll send like the financial institution will sheet the account where they essentially send it back to like the government. And then at that point that you have a way to look for unclaimed funds. But if the financial institution is comfortable with keeping it, or if it's their policy to keep it, it just stays there.
Okay, awesome. Next question is going to be, what's the difference between a designated beneficiary and an eligible designated beneficiary?
That is a great question. And we're going to look at this. It's who the person is. So a designated beneficiary is a non-spouse in certain trusts. And an eligible designated beneficiary is going to be minor children. So your child that's 35 is a designated beneficiary. Your child who is 16 is an eligible beneficiary. And then disabled person, chronically ill, not more than 10 years, spouses in certain trusts. So essentially, most of the time, to simplify this, most of the time, it's your spouse is the eligible designated beneficiary. Other beneficiaries are typically a designated beneficiary. There are a few exceptions that make designated beneficiaries turn into eligible designated beneficiary, but it's not. But typically, it's just the spouse.
Thank you. And our next question is, do you recommend a POD beneficiary on at least one bank account?
Yes. I do like PODs. I also like joints. So when somebody passes away, a lot of times there are immediate expenses that need to be considered, especially things like, and some of them are quite large, like funerals and things like that. And so having PODs on accounts or having a joint on accounts can be really helpful for getting funds quickly. Like Candace mentioned, for an IRA, it can take, sometimes months to get the funds, and a 401k is going to be similar. So some of your more liquid funds are going to be better for having your beneficiaries have access to some more liquid funds or some easier to access funds is really, really beneficial. And so now with that, you have to be careful, because with a joint, they have access to the money right away. Like if I set a joint on my account, they would have access today, like while I was still alive, whereas all beneficiaries have to wait. But the reason that I like having a joint, a POD, and then obviously like with retirement accounts, you can't, it's just a beneficiary, is that you don't you have to have a death certificate if you have a POD or for accessing your retirement accounts, and it can take a couple weeks to get the death certificate, and you have to pay for the death certificate. So I think having a good variety is really, really helpful. And again, talking to an estate planner, talking to a financial advisor, they can kind of help you strategize, because you don't necessarily want a joint on all of your accounts, right?
Yes, thank you for that, Madison. Next question is going to be, how does your explanation of taxing beneficiaries square with the fact that most states and the federal government have rules regarding how much one can inherit tax-free, much higher than most people leave?
So can you read the question again?
Yes. How does your explanation of taxing beneficiaries square with the fact that most states and the federal government have rules regarding how much one can inherit tax-free much higher than most have, or most people leave? I'm sorry.
You're good. So there are like gift tax. So in short, I'm not 100% sure that I fully understand the question, so I might not answer it. And if I don't, feel free to type it in. But so you can leave, people will leave, for instance, so like, sorry, there's a certain amount that you can give to somebody that is that would be tax free or whatever, like the gift tax. So, and that's like $15,000 or $17,000, right? And in that situation, obviously, a lot of people are leaving more than that for their inheritance. But typically, how taxation works is that when the receiver of the funds pulls the money out of the protected account, out of the IRA, then they are taxed based on their tax bracket, the receiver's tax bracket, and then that's how those funds get taxed. Obviously, different states have different rules, and I can't speak to state taxes at all, really. And so it would be worthwhile to talk to a tax advisor as well if you have certain questions about that specifically.
Our next
Awesome.
question, thank you so much, Madison. And our next question is, can someone talk about the True Stage life insurance that comes with the credit union's membership?
Milton or Jernica, do you guys want to speak to that?
I think Carrie.
I can go ahead.
Great.
And Milton can piggyback if it said. So we do partner with TrueStage that offers insurance products on like our loans. They offer Debt Shield should you have an involuntary life event and you can't you lose your income. It would protect your loan payments in that way, cover your loan payments. We offer insurance for autos through TrueStage, Gap Plus. And then one more, mechanical repair coverage. I am not completely aware of the life insurance arm of them. I don't think that is one that we have in our package, but I already submitted this question to our lending VP and I wrote your name down and I will email you with more information tomorrow as soon as he gets back to me with the details. And I do have a link to the TrueStage arm of the insurance that has a bunch of calculators and more information on TrueStage products. So I'm going to share that in the chat right now. But again, I'll make sure you get the exact answers tomorrow. And Milton,
Yeah.
unless you are more aware than me.
No, I was going to say that was the best way to put it. So just think of TrueStage as the insurance that you want to add whenever you are taking out a loan, whether it's a personal loan, a car loan. There's a lot of different options that you can take advantage through TrueStage. So in the event you become disabled, even in the event of death, they can also pay off the loan. But again, those are only connected to a particular product. So that's how we partner with TrueStage. Now, if you want something a little more complex, you probably might want to talk to our financial advisor, Michael Schimmel. He can probably, try to put you and give you a lot of more details. But again, we're not licensed to talk about those type of products here on this call. But setting an appointment with Michael probably will be the best way to tackle that. But that's a great question, though. I really, really like that question. Thanks for submitting that.
Thank you for that. Next question we have is, what is a transfer on death document?
Again, I'm not sure I understand the question. So a transfer, like, so transferring wealth to a beneficiary would be in the IRA world as a distribution. The tax code is like we have tax codes for that, but that shouldn't be necessarily something that's needed. But it's just a distribution from the original IRA. So if you're a beneficiary, essentially that IRA becomes your inherited IRA, and then you can take distributions from it as you want, as fits into your tax strategy, as or your need, depending on what, whatever your situation is. And you would just go to that financial institution and ask for a distribution form on your inherited IRA. And then you would be able to take funds out. Once you have the inherited IRA, you are also able to transfer that to another inherited IRA. So let's say that your loved one had an IRA with us and at Fidelity, you can take your Fidelity one and transfer it to USSFCU or vice versa, and it can live in the inherited IRA at that place. So, and then you can remove funds from it at that point. So, if I'm not sure that I answered that question, so please feel free to put it in again.
Thank you so much, Madison. And our next question is, in general, how frequently should you review/update your trust? What life events would cause you to review your trust sooner?
That is a great question. So I personally like the once a year method. Whether you do it at tax time, at the new year, at your birthday, whatever, annual event that you remember, it's a good time to evaluate. But I truly believe that you can't go wrong. And it doesn't need to be like a formal go to your lawyer's office and sit down with them. It could just be reading through the trust really quick. It could take 10 minutes, but you can do it less often. I don't think it's needed more than that, unless if there's a triggering event. And that's just my personal opinion. Triggering events, any kind of death, even if you're not thinking that it is necessarily related, you would be surprised. Like Candace said, there are so many people who open up their IRA and then don't look at it again. Right. And so like in that situation, we had, when we were reviewing the accounts, there was a lot of people who opened their IRA young, which is bravo. The younger you can start, the better you are. But then they, got married, had children, things like that. And it's been 10 years and it's still their mother as their beneficiary and, and not their spouse and children. So, so any triggering event, think health benefits, right? Anything that would allow you to have new health benefits would also probably be a good time to review your trust. Any death, any marriage, any, if you have a really bad Thanksgiving and somebody made you mad, why not review your trust, So I think, any time of big family function could warrant a review.
Thank you, Madison. We have another question. Any recommendations or suggestions to catch up if I started late preparing for retirement?
Yeah, that's a great question. So max out everything you can. So you have I'm a big fan of the match and out strategy for the 401k. So whatever your employer will match for your 401k or TSP or whatever, employer plan that you have, match that and then go and fund your IRA completely. You just have a little bit more flexibility with your IRA. And especially if you're over contributing or contributing maybe a little bit more than, like you wish, sometimes it's a little bit easier to access that money in an IRA. And so match your 401k, max out your IRA, and then either max out an HSA. HSAs, I feel like, are a really underrated tool. If you have access to an HSA, maxing that out. Once you hit retirement, you can either continue to use it for medical expenses or it functions a lot like a traditional IRA. So, but medical expenses are a big concern in retirement. And so maxing that out is a really, really good utilization. And then going back and throwing everything else that you can in that 401k. If you're at the point where you're maxing out all of that, bravo, you're saving, like half of your income. There are investments you can do outside of it. So, but the main thing is just save like crazy. Make sure that you're invested. A lot of money, a lot of time. Time is your biggest asset, right? Time is what can help your money grow the most. And so because we've lost some of that, making sure that those funds are invested can buy back some of that time. If you even put money in your IRA and it's not invested, it's not growing more than just a regular old savings account. So you're losing even more time than what you've already lost. So make sure everything's invested. Talk to a financial advisor. And then look at your assets. Do you have a home? Do you live in an expensive area? Are you willing to move to a cheaper one in retirement? But evaluate what kind of lifestyle you want in retirement. And then play around with the date that you retire. Play around with working part-time in retirement. So there's a lot of things. that you can kind of, it depends really on what you're open to and what you want your life to look at like. But if you have started later than you want, today is better than tomorrow. So it's valuable that you're here. It's valuable that you're thinking about it.
Thank you so much. And our next question is there a general dollar threshold before a trust is advised to pass wealth along?
I would not say a specific dollar amount because it's not just the amount of dollars that you have. It's also like what kind of assets you have. If you have like a ton of cash and but it's not in anything, you know, more than really like easy to access investments, or if it's all going to one person, then you know that's a different consideration than somebody who maybe has significantly less but has properties and has 10 children and has, you know, whatever the case may be. So it's not really about a dollar amount. It's kind of about how complicated things are. I don't think it's ever silly to ask. You know, if a lawyer doesn't feel like you need one, then they'll probably tell you, or they might switch you over to a will, or, you know, I mentioned before, like starting with a financial advisor, your financial advisor can tell you whether or not they feel they would advise in your specific situation to get a trust. So, it doesn't hurt to talk to somebody about your specific situation.
Oh, sorry. Awesome. Thank you for that. Next question is, can the person who is on the joint account access the funds after the death certificate is received? I want to make sure my spouse has access to all of my credit union accounts and the account will not be locked down once the death certificate is issued.
Yeah, so they would still have access. Now they might not like their debit card, the deceased debit card would get shut down, but as long as the joint has their own, you know, then they would be able to access that. But the sorry, I got distracted. But the joint has full access to the account like it's their own. And so it just, the reason that the death certificate is so important is that if somebody comes in and says that they're the deceased and tries to pull out money, if we know that they're deceased, then they have a lot harder time getting access to those funds, right? So don't let that stop you. You know, it's the account will be open to the other people on the account, but make sure that it gets reported because it keeps the account safer.
Thank you. And our next question is, I have a federal employee with a TSP. If I convert the TSP to a Roth IRA, would my beneficiary still need to pay taxes?
So Roth IRAs, so one, I always recommend talking to a tax advisor because I cannot give tax advice, but Roth IRAs are already tax dollars. So there are less tax consequences in general. Now, if your TSP is traditional funds, which most of the time they are, then you would be doing the conversion process and you would be paying the taxes on that, which might be more lucrative because you're in retirement. And so it might be that less taxes are being paid in general. That is a really valuable strategy to go over with a financial advisor. Michael did a webinar on Roth conversions a little while back, and it was really valuable. So definitely a good resource to talk to. It might be more lucrative to do something like that. It might be more lucrative to your beneficiaries to go to Roth in general. It's worth exploring, but it might not. So that's a very worthwhile individual exploration.
All right. I think that wraps up all of our questions for this evening.
Jarnika, somebody did share that they had gotten and I don't know if I'm saying it right, but a NOK box, NOK, for their planning. Have you ever heard of that, Madison? Because I looked it up and it looks really helpful. It's like a pre-labeled folders, files, fireproof safe box. So that was really helpful. I wanted to share.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you should Google
I've
it.
seen like folders that have like the pre-labeled tabs and stuff. But I think like a fireproof box is brilliant.
But
So
this one's like a roadmap for your next of kin. It's specifically for estate planning purposes. I had never heard it until she shared it in the comments, and
That's
I Googled it,
awesome.
and now it looked on the if I die planner slide was when that came up. Sorry.
Yeah,
I saw
I want to look
something like
into it.
that a while ago, and it literally had every page you can stick stuff in, like for your bank account. Hey, this is financial institution XYZ, this is ABC, and then all the information was in each tab. I did see something like that. Matter of fact, last week.
That's awesome. Stuff like that is so helpful.
Yeah, is that on Amazon?
Yeah, well, I Googled it and there's a ton of reviews there. I think they're on Amazon too, but people were doing reviews and saying how helpful they were. There's some starting at 150, some a little less, but it looked like it's like a trending almost, if that's the
Sounds
right
like
word.
nice Christmas gifts.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That'd be nice.
I like
TikTok
that.
shop. It is. I'm getting one.
And the slides will be available. We'll send out the slides tomorrow. And some of the resources we talked about, somebody just asked in the chat. The resources that we mentioned, Michael's number, Retirement Central, the Foundation's Wellness Center, I'll include those when we email that out too.
What's the name again of it, Carrie? We're gonna in the chat. Oh, okay.
N-O-K. It was in the Q&A
N-O-K
portion,
box.
capital N, capital O-K. So I'd assume it's Noke box, but that's what I Googled, N-O-K.
It's pretty much next of kin. So yeah.
Oh,
Ah.
yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Thanks, Milton.
You got it. But
Yes, okay. And she's
with that being said, we just want to thank Madison and her entire team again for being with us this evening. I know we went over about 15 minutes, but it's because of all those great questions that were coming through. And again, Madison, Candace, Raven, thank you all so much for making time. We know you're busy, especially now as we're getting through the tax season. And but again, if you have any questions, Madison, are you able to go to that last slide with the contact information for the whole team?
Absolutely.
And up with that. While you're doing that, I also want to invite everyone to come back and see us next week. You know what? This is, like I stated, this is the last week of January, so that means that next month is Valentine's month, and with it, we want you to fall in love. In pre-celebration of Valentine's Day, we want you to fall in love with your credit union benefits. So come back and see us next Wednesday, because the person that you see on your screen right now, Jornika Trent, is going to be leading the presentation. She's got something special for everyone for next week. So again, Madison, Raven, Candace, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. If anyone wants to get a hold of either one of them, please reach out to them. The phone number is 800-374-2758, option 7, and you can just say either of their names, and then you will be connected directly to them. Or better yet, go ahead and shoot them an email, IRA service at USSFCU.org, and they are always keeping track of that inbox. Before I go, I know I saw a couple of colleagues on the attendee list. I think I saw Miss Shirley and also Miss Sylvia. So thank you all for joining us as well too. But with that being said, Eddie, you want to bring us home, sir?
Eddie had to go clear the parking lot of snow at church, so he had to get off a couple minutes ago.
Okay, I am so sorry. I totally missed that message. But again, thank you all for joining us. We'll see you back again next week. Thank you. Please stay warm. Be safe out there. And thank you all for being part of the weekly Wednesday webinar family. See you again next week.